Daniel. Thank you so much for coming to my not thesis. I say that finally because it used to be a thesis advised by both Professor Raegan and Professor Bynum, and then I ended up not doing any of my writing deadlines in the winter. And then by the end of the winter was convinced, rightfully so, convinced rightfully so to turn it into an independent study. And to your credit, to Professor Levin and Taylor, it has made my senior spring much more enjoyable. Hello, if you would like to sit, there's seating over there. There's these programs, I don't know if you got them, they weren't folded it was like an interactive experience. not that I just didn't want to fold them. There's seating over there too, Nick, if you want to sit there. I don't know. Olivia, are you leaving soon? Okay, if someone comes in, you can just tell them there's seating over there, so I don't have to tell people. Yeah, there's like a little description of like what each of the things are. I'm honestly pretty flustered because my car got a boot in the TDX lot earlier today. I had to pay $150 to the brothers of Beta. So it looks like there's about 30 or more than 30 people. So I was telling someone earlier, if everyone here Venmos me $5, you're genuinely like paying for like it's like a ticket, but also you're paying for the production of the art.
What's your Venmo?
What's the Venmo? What's the Venmo?
Oh, I'm like sort of joking. You don't have to Venmo. But it's
What's the Venmo?
The Daniel Lee. Yeah, it's the parking lot is connected to the focal lot, and it's not the focal lot. It's like free on the weekends, but it's confusing. The signing now is not that confusing. Yeah, that happened 30 minutes before we were supposed to do the sound check. Okay, so I'm going to introduce everyone, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about the piece, and then we're going to play, and then we're going to have questions, if there's any questions afterwards. So I'm Daniel. You don't want to introduce all of yourselves? Let's do name, year, and... Oh, you can just say the sound that you said earlier, but without the context behind it. Yeah. Oh wait, never mind. Don't do that. Choose a different sound.
Choose a different sound?
Yeah. So I'll do mine first.
Okay.
Daniel, 23. He, him. I'm playing cello today, and the sound from earlier in the day is the sound. The sound of flowers blooming. Yeah.
Okay.
You don't have to say it. You can just.
I'm Jason. I'm a 24. I play the viola, and the sound that I said earlier was the ringing of FaceTime.
I'm Devon. I'm a 22. I play alto. The sound earlier was boots plodding in mud.
I'm Raegan. I'm a 24. She, they. I'll be playing French horn, and the sound from earlier was like a hoo-hoo owl sound.
I'm Eli. I'm a 23. I play bass, he, him, and the sound was the sound of cars driving past my window.
Hi everyone. Oh. Okay. Go for it.
Okay. I'm Tushar. I'm a 26. I play the tabla, and the sound that I chose earlier was what I thought my brain sounded like at that time.
Hi everyone. I'm Shania. I'm a 23. I'll be on keys today, and the sound that I chose before was conflict.
Is it recording, Kai? Great. Wonderful. Yeah, so a little about the piece. It's called Feelings of an Unknown History, inspired by a trumpeter, and composer named Wadada Leo Smith. I write like a one-paragraph blurb about him in like the second paragraph of the artist note. But basically, he wrote this this epic work. It's 21 pieces, talking about the feelings of various moments throughout the civil rights movement, and also his personal experiences as a black person growing up in Mississippi in the 40s and 50s. As well as there's some other tunes that are entitled like Dred Scott 1857, which refers to when Dred Scott, who was a slave, was brought up to the north and then back to the south, and he tried to go to the courts for his freedom, but unfortunately that was overturned. There's another piece called Emmett Till. He said in an interview how Emmett Till was murdered like literally 30 miles away from where he was living, and he was alive at the time. Like, this very recent history. There's other pieces called September 11th, 2001. And so there's this quote that I wrote in here. He says about the music is not programmatic. It's actually more expressionistic. I looked at the psychological impact that this movement had on America, and I try to convey it through cultural means. And I think that was very impactful for me because they're sitting over there. Hello. It was very impactful for me because when I first started trying to compose music for this project, I was thinking like, oh, in 2016 this happened and it was more exciting. And then a few months later, the momentum died down and it was less exciting. So maybe the piece should be loud and then it should get soft, like a sort of like programmatic tone poem type of thing. But then after listening and reading about Woodard Smith's work and reading about this piece, it got me thinking like, oh, how do I capture this feeling of a moment? And then you take that and apply that to Asian American history at Dartmouth and Asian American history in general, where that's not really taught at all. It's not taught in K through 12 and it's not taught here at Dartmouth. And for me, it was pretty impactful as Chinese American who grew up in the Bay Area, which is a hotbed of Asian American history, and genuinely not knowing how much history there was literally right outside of my doorstep. Not until like I read a book or like had to go seek it out for myself. So this idea of how do you know something that you don't know, and how do you describe that feeling of something you don't know, is what guides a lot of this piece. I was going off my head. Yeah, and thank you to all the musicians here. These are all people that I've just met and while I play music at Dartmouth, and they've one thing that Taylor really emphasizes, Taylor's my advisor, but one thing that he emphasizes is to really credit like all the musicians in the ensemble, because this isn't just coming out of my mind. And especially there's a lot of sections in the music where it's just like open improvisation, and these people are like making the music, like they're making the choices, they're making the sounds. Like I did nothing besides like text them a lot to get them in the same room together. On that note, today is the first day, actually, all 7 of us have been in the same room together. Just like, you know how it is, like Dartmouth students, it's hard to schedule things, and like, yeah, so literally I got the boot on my car at 4:30. I found the boot on my car at 4:30, and then we had a rehearsal here at 5 p.m. And that was the first time all 7 of us were here, and it was sounding really good, so I'm really excited for y'all to hear it. I don't think I have anything else to add. Other musical inspirations, I guess, Woodard Smith, Henry Threadgill. If you listen to his music, he has a lot of like French horn plus alto saxophone and bass plus cello. Julian Saporiti is an artist, scholar artist, who writes music about American history and specifically Asian American history, drawing on his own experiences as a biracial Southeast Asian American, and how he navigates cultural conflicts, political conflicts with his family, and also looking at parallels throughout American history, such as Japanese Americans incarcerated during World War II compared to like Mexican Americans at the border, and how their families are being separated, drawing parallels between how there was a Japanese American incarceration camp in eastern Colorado during World War II, and in the same region, just like 60 years prior, was the site of the Sand Creek Massacre, where hundreds of indigenous people were slaughtered by American like Western expansion. So a lot of dark things, but there's like one happy thing, and there's a few happy things in here. Yeah, I'm rambling, but we'll just play. Feel free to hoot and holler, I guess, if you like. I think like
We're cooking.
Yeah, I think the general like staying silent conventions are a little bit overrated, but do what you feel is best in the moment for you to enjoy the experience. Shania, can you give us an A? the movements, but this is okay. to cue us into a next section. There's another point I yelled out numbers because we just weren't together, so I yelled out unmeasured.
Like, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Years of passage of time.
Yeah, passage of time. 15 was 2015. No. Yeah.
In sort of like orchestrating this, do you think you kind of like privileged sort of the idea of like the perspective or like the journey of a singular, maybe hypothetical, maybe real student, Asian American student that would have attended Dartmouth, and like their kind of ebb and flow of them, like dealing with the racial landscape at this campus during their college career, or do you think like you kind of dealt with the ebb and flow of Asian American life at this campus more broadly?
Yeah, it wasn't really like trying to extrapolate to like another what is like Asian student at this point in time. It was more just like as I was reading a lot about this sort of history. As I was reading about this history, and so over the fall, I ended up interviewing 19 people who were either former staff members, former students, current faculty, about their experiences with Asian American activism at Dartmouth, and just asking questions like, how did you not burn out, or how did you burn out? What were the interpersonal conflicts like, as there's a lot of like relational conflicts in activist groups, and so a lot of my composition, a lot of this composition comes out of like my feelings of engaging with that material, like my feelings of talking to people from those specific years, or my feelings from like reading different documents or like old petitions or things like that, and like how did I feel when I was doing that, and that's what I tried to put into there.
So you said that parts of the piece has a lot of improvisation.
Yeah.
Like what kind of goes through your head when you're improvising and coming up with some melodies on the spot?
Yeah. So a lot of this improvisatory sections had materials to improvise off of. And so, for example, in the very last section, Eli and Tushar and Shania established this sort of groove over this B flat pedal, like you heard this, and the theme that they were improvising over was, and then from there, that not only does like that give a certain feeling. In the rehearsal process, I would talk to everyone about like, okay, this is section 4, here's the subtitle for section 4, here's what's going through my head, here's what I'm feeling. Sometimes I'll like offer like colors of like, so if you notice on the, I don't know if Lauren's here, but if you look at the program, this photo, so I asked my friend Lauren Lim, she's a 26, to design this, and I told her like, these are the colors that I feel, or like that I see while I'm composing each of the sections, and she incorporated that into the poster, which I thought was really cool. That was not a direction for me, that was like her own thing. But like, yeah, so like when we're talking about improvisation, it's like giving them the materials, not only what like the notes on the page, but like the context behind the piece, and then at the end of the day, it's just listening to each other. You'll notice that like the instrumentation is like really wonky, and it's literally just because I was thinking about like who have I enjoyed meeting, and who have I enjoyed playing with, and let me write something based off of the things that they could play. And then after I had a draft, Taylor said, you need to either convince me that you don't need a rhythm section or have a rhythm section. And so that's where Tushar and Eli came in. Not that I haven't enjoyed. They were the first people to come to mind when I was thinking of incorporating a rhythm section. I was trying to keep it like smaller numbers, but it ended up being 7. But I've enjoyed the process. So yeah. Yes, Lynn.
It was great. Y'all cooked and we ate it up. One thing was very interesting because I was like listening to like all the instruments, and I realized that they were like usually in the ensemble there's a violin which usually plays the highest pitch, and
Yeah.
I'm very happy to hear the viola because I played viola for 2 years
Yeah.
and really hammered it. But I think that like that is kind of like connected to like the theme about like the idea that there were highs. I think that like with like section 2, I can tell that was when like the music became much more like very like hearted, and I think that, but it's interesting that even like, I think I'm reading too into it, the fact that like a violin isn't included in being like there's not really a high moment in Asian American like studies here, because like there were Nora and like but it's just like also the colors being like the same from the beginning till the end, being like there's a lot of similarities to like what happened in the beginning, and like there were great moments, but I don't think there was like a point where it's just like, oh, it's not the bare minimum that happens. I don't know.
That is an interpretation. I saw, yeah, Eli?
I was wondering if you could talk about your process of how you translate like concepts and the history that you're trying to depict into musical melodies and chord progressions.
It's I have, so in my like journal, when I was like trying to brainstorm, I was like thinking, well, generally from the research, I see like sort of eras, like different sections, and so that's where 4 sections came out of. From each section, then I wrote like what are like groups or moments or like feelings, like emotions. And so like whenever I write any like type of poetry or music, I normally start with like what is the feeling, so like angry, intense, hopeful, cautious, and then from there, then I just sit in front of the piano and just plunk things out until something feels right, and then I put it in front of people. So in some ways, it's like just like throwing it out there and letting them play it, and then if it sounds nice, then keeping it, and if it doesn't, then switching it out. But yeah, it's just like starting from like what sort of message do I want to convey, and then going from there. Yeah. Does that answer it?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, okay.
Could you talk about like the process of like you writing it and then putting it in front of each individual musician, or maybe like some of the musicians could even talk about.
Oh
like,
yeah.
Like how did like how did each of you like put yourself or try to take Daniel's work and like make it something that you felt right to you?
Yeah, so I'll start. I really suck at reading music, so I really love that there's a lot of improvisatory stuff in his piece. But yeah, I would say like for me, like the way in which I just translated like what he like wrote down into what I played was quite literally like, okay, you know, hearing him talk so passionately about his work, and then also like, you know, in my own free time, like learning from friends about like the history of Asian American activism here on campus, and then, you know, bringing, you know, back that knowledge, and also like what he told us so passionately about, and being like, I get the feeling somewhat now, and really doing that like before every practice, like every time we met up, and just really soaked in like, oh, like this is what he meant when he said like hopeful or cautious, right? And yeah, so it was a matter of really just like, I think honing in on like the research and the emotions he was trying to convey from it. And yeah, I would say that's kind of how yeah. I also like played in a jazz band, so there I learned how to like improv, you know, make sounds. I think.
Daniel's a great band leader. He started like every rehearsal with time to just be what we were first, which is friends, all of us. And I just really respected his work ethic and not taking anything too seriously, and allowing himself and everyone to breathe always, and that coming first as people. And also making really wonderful music, and it's just nice, you know, as musicians you kind of take turns being a band leader or like a performer or a composer or whatever, and so changing those shoes with you is always a pleasure.
Yeah. I've never done improv or like things like that before until I met Daniel and Raegan in London. That was my first time, and they both kind of helped me through my first time like improvising for Raegan's composition. So to be able to do it a second time with like Daniel, again, like kind of guiding me, I think was definitely a key factor in making me feel comfortable to kind of come out of like just reading sheet music and like do something I usually don't do.
Yeah, I usually don't get to improv a lot, and Daniel I don't think ever gives negative feedback, but he gives a lot of positive feedback. It's kind of cool to let him be the curator of sound, where I'll like try something weird, and then Daniel told me that he likes it, or he won't say anything, and I won't try it again.
Wait, no. There's a lot of things you do that I enjoy.
No, I know, yeah. Just like putting stuff in front of him, or like just like how he's putting stuff in front of me, I can put stuff in front of Daniel, and yeah, it's a lot of fun. Definitely very empowering working with Daniel on this.
I guess also to that point though, I also like, I don't know if they ever listened to any of it, but like I would send them videos or like songs that I wanted to emulate the feeling of. So I mentioned like Henry Threadgill at the beginning, in a few in his sextet and his like very, very circus thing. All of these are recommended by Taylor, by the way. But Deirdre Murray plays cello and Fred Hopkins plays bass. And the way that they interplay with each other, like I sent a few songs, and then there was the specific chord progression at the very end came from this YouTube video of this person who is actually like a Harvard Berkeley dual degree person. Okay, this is getting too much into the details. She's part of the Harvard Opportune. She sings a cappella. She doesn't know who I am, but I follow her on Instagram. She has a song that I really like, and she's very good at singing. Yeah, so just sending them like things that I also like. I really like the sound of this and the way that it evokes this feeling. Let's go off of that. Yeah,
Yeah, kind of building on the previous question, what are some of the challenges and opportunities when you bring musicians who are not Asian American to play music about Asian American?
I never really thought about it. I think there's, well, I don't know if I'll let the non-Asian people like talk, but after I say this, but personally, I don't view it as like music for our community. If anything, it's more just like, oh, this is like a thing that I'm interested in. How do I feel about it? And it like literally is that deep or shallow. Like I personally don't hold too tightly to like, oh, this thing belongs to a certain identity category. I do recognize that, like, for example, like jazz or like Black creative music is like coming out of like Black American tradition. I think that's very important to acknowledge. But like this particular like piece is more just like it's just sound. But I don't know if anyone else approached it differently at the non-Asian. It's okay if you don't want to talk.
No, I mean, it's like Shania said of like, I mean, you gave us a lot to like think about, and trying to come at it from that angle of just being like, yeah, trying like, even if it's not necessarily an emotion that I've specifically had, being like, what's the emotion that Daniel's trying to convey here, and what can I do to get that, and hopefully like, I don't know, I appreciate the trust that like you like want to just see us as musicians to help bring that about. And yeah, I think that you did a great job of just like bringing us into all this history, and I learned a lot through the process of making this music, which I really enjoyed.
Yeah, I echo that. Like, just trying to put myself in your shoes, you know, and even if those shoes like don't fit, you know, for whatever reason, you know, I'm still in that space, and that still, you know, has value, and is worth something.
Cool. Okay, I don't know what time it is. I don't know if I should be wrapping up. What time it is?
7:54.
Oh, okay. I guess I'll have questions till 8. Cool.
Okay, sorry for asking this question. I guess like whilst listening to it, I mean you introduced with like this idea that like, oh, it won't be upbeat, but I feel like I didn't personally find that to be the case. But a moment that stood out to me was like, I think at the beginning of the second or the third movement, this like cacophony where all of y'all were playing, and like it was like harsh, and I guess like the movement began with this like cacophony, this like rupture, this like it was beginning with an apocalypse, sort of, like, to speak like that, rather than ending with one. And I guess, like, that idea of, like, Asian American experience at Dartmouth, for example, or maybe your own racial reckoning and your own racialization at Dartmouth beginning at moments of apocalypse and, like, kind of resolving those tensions into, like, harmony or into music was really interesting to me. So I guess could you, like, speak to, like, that placement of that noise and cacophony into your composition?
I think what you're referring to is where everyone went like, boom, that one?
Yeah.
Well, the subtitle is 4A, Black for Faculty of Color. When I think about 4A, which is an activist group in the mid-2010s, and if you read the little blurb, there's like, it talks a little bit about them. But it was just like a time of a lot of activism from like, in 2013, there was this movement called #RealTalk where a bunch of people interrupted Dimensions show and they were yelling about like sexual assault on campus, like toxicity of like Greek life, and like they were like yelling about like a lot of real issues, like regardless of where you stand on the issues, like there are issues there, you know? And yeah, so that was in 2013. The following year, 2014, a group of activists formed this multiracial coalition. They submitted this thing called the Freedom Budget, which had 70-ish points on it. And they occupied Phil Hanlon's office, and they demanded that, they had like checkboxes next to each of the things, and they demanded that he just check that he had read it, and would write under the point like how he would address it. And he ended up like not doing that, and like he's quoted in the D saying like, this is not how you do activism, like we need to have peaceful dialogue, and regardless of where you stand on the issue, like that is a thing that happened, and people were like very fired up about it. That was in 2014. Between 2015 and 2016, 4A submitted 5 different proposals for cluster hires in Asian American Studies, for an Asian American Studies minor, for an Asian American Studies program. 4A is a big reason why the Asian American LLC exists today, but also probably not exist next year, sadly. That's a Dartmouth thing beyond you. But they're also a big reason why through the graduate school at Guarini, there's an Asian American postdoc position. Yeah, so they just did a lot of this activism. And so, like tying it back to the question of like the motivation behind this, like, is just yeah, just like when I was interviewing those people, like even though they were burnt out and like they like hadn't really thought about it for a while, but when they went back and talked about it, like you could really feel that like the fire when they were talking, like the strong emotions from when they were students. So that's what's behind it.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
Cool. I think that brings us to 8. But if you have any questions, you can text me. You can chat with me afterwards. But thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Professor Chen here. Okay, last story. I mentioned this in the program notes, but my friends Lily and Monacy were the ones who started the Dartmouth Asian American Studies Collective. They were on a Zoom call with a few alums and 4A, like previous 4A members. And this was 21S, so like still COVID. They were not many people were on campus, but they were on this Zoom call, and a question was asked during the Zoom call where they're like, "Oh, is 4A still around? Are y'all still doing anything?" Just complete silence in the Zoom, as many of you are familiar with. And that's what motivated Lily and Monacy to create DAASC. Now, fast forward to sophomore summer, Monacy asked me if I wanted to join DAASC, and I said no. I at the time did not realize any value of ethnic studies. I was like, well, I think student activism's kind of it doesn't really amount to anything. You're just angry, and then you yell a lot, and then nothing happens afterwards. So I don't think I really want to do this, and so I'll pass. But at the same time, I was starting this independent study with Professor Kim, and in sophomore summer, there was no other class that I really wanted to take, so I ended up emailing Professor Walton, and she said, "Oh, I'm busy." So then I cold emailed Professor Kim and said "Hey, would you be willing to advise an independent study where I just read 10 books or something?" I ended up reading 7.5 books. Regrettably, not enjoying as much of the sophomore summer as I should have. But I read a lot of books, and that was my whoa, I'm Asian. And whoa, there's a history behind this. And whoa, there's people who also experience this. And whoa, I'm from the Bay Area and there's so much that happened in the Bay Area. And reading narratives that centered myself. And a lot of that really hit me. So thank you to Professor Kim for doing, for fostering that for me and so many other students. Yeah, it's been an hour, so thank you all so much. Have a great rest of your term, I guess.